Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
And he's here. He's with us. It's exciting. It's Dr. Robert A. Heineman, political science professor emeritus, Alfred University. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, let's not make it too exciting now, Brian.
Okay, let's start out with, there's so many things this week. Let's start out with increased security for Gizlane Maxwell. What do you make of that? They're saying the Justice Department has ordered increased security for her in prison?
Yeah, well, I think, again, I'm not certain how smart she is, to tell you the truth. But in any case, they don't, they don't want to take a repeat of what happened with Epstein. And, of course, the other side of this is that the claim is she has videos and tapes.
That will magically surface if anything suspicious happens.
That's correct. And on the other hand, does this indicate she's not going out of her way to cooperate? I'm not sure. If I were she, I would certainly be cooperating as fast as I could. But she has a very good attorney, someone who has real experience in the federal district court out there in New York City. So I think, his contacts and his advice to her probably be well worth the money she's spending, which I would guess is probably quite a bit.
It's kind of interesting. She's a person that a lot of people hate, but everybody wants to make sure she's safe.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Dr. Bob, and that's for obvious reasons, is because both sides, left and right, are hoping that the rich people that they dislike will get into trouble. Okay, moving on to the Supreme Court on President Trump's taxes. A ruling came down on that this week.
Yes, came down yesterday. 2 rulings, and I think President Trump came out very well, frankly. Both rulings were 7-2 majorities, so a solid majority supports the position the court took in each case. And the first case was in response to subpoenas by the House of Representatives for his tax records. And I think the court basically was saying, hold it just a minute, this is basically a fishing expedition. You're asking for a total run of documents. You don't have any specific claims here. We're just not going to tolerate that. And I suppose the House can come back and try to come up with more specific claims, although I think they're going to have a hard time doing that because it's not clear to me by any means that Trump has done anything wrong. Then the other one is, of course, the one to Vance in the state court system in New York City, trying to get Trump's tax returns there for what he alleges are certain criminal aspects of Trump's pre-presidential activities. And they've basically sent that back, leaving it up to Vance and Trump's attorneys to pound out, well, what is he actually entitled to? Can you be more specific? I mean, at this point, Trump's attorneys will raise all kinds of objections, and some of them, I think, probably quite legitimate. And this will drag on for quite a while in the New York State courts. And again, I think this is purely a political effort by the Democrats in New York State to embarrass Trump. Although, again, there may well be some infractions here and there, who knows. The bigger picture of this whole thing is when you start going after presidents' business activities and such before they became president, the problem is it really kind of inhibits any business person from running for the presidency. They certainly don't want to make available all kinds of deals that they've had and such in the past I think it really does narrow the kind of people that will be running for the presidency. Now,
do you think maybe that's why Oprah didn't run?
It could be, could well be. On the other hand, the presidents are looking at the Clinton effort and the Nixon cases. In both cases, the court basically, well, in Nixon's case, the court in Nixon's case held that he had to turn over some of his tapes, and the case in Clinton's situation, Clinton was held not to be immune from any kind of activity previous to while he was president. And Trump was trying to make that claim here too, that he had sort of absolute immunity while he's president. And the courts kind of tossed that aside. Certainly they did in the Clinton situation with not Monica Lewinsky. Who was it that Clinton was exposing himself to there?
Well, you got Jennifer Flowers.
No, that was
Paula Jones.
Paula Jones, yes, Paula Jones, who went up and exposed himself to her, allegedly, of course, and she came back with a suit, which came to nothing. But the point is, the president's claiming that they can't be sued for activities done before being president. That has not gone too far. Fortunately, we haven't had that many cases in terms of attempts to go after a sitting president for activities taken before they were president. But it's also interesting to note that in both the Nixon and the Clinton and the Trump situations, all three of them were under threat of impeachment. Nixon, of course, never came to anything because he resigned. Clinton was, in fact, impeached and failed in the Senate. And Trump was impeached and it failed in the Senate. And then along comes the Supreme Court bouncing along there with some decisions in that context. So I don't know. It may well be that the president increasingly, and this is kind of interesting, here we are, the most powerful nation in the world, and our president is becoming more and more circumscribed by these really political attacks of one sort or another. And the court is continually saying things like, no person is above the law, not even the president, etc. So we'll see where this plays. But generally speaking, I think we'd have to say that Trump came out very well here. In the middle of an election campaign, he doesn't need his tax returns splayed all over the press and for every commentator to make inquiries into. I don't blame him a bit there. Now, I do think, though, his tax returns as president, those I think he probably should make available. That I think the public may well have a legitimate interest in knowing what they are, and I would guess any public officials' tax returns, while they are public officials, are probably more liable to public examination.
Dr. Bob, the liberals are saying that Tucker Carlson's going to run for president someday. The conservatives are saying that Andrew Cuomo is going to get dragged into this. What do you make of those two theories at this point, Friday, July 10th, 2020?
Well, my view would be Tucker Carlson is not going to run for president in the near future, although he certainly would be a tough candidate to deal with.
In a debate, yes.
Yeah, no, you're well put. I mean, when I say a tough candidate to deal with, there are things like having the money to run, having an organization, having a good sense of how to put a campaign together. All those things come into play. But yeah, he'd be very tough in a debate. Now, Andrew Cuomo, I still think, I was just talking to one of my friends just a few moments ago, I can't believe the Democrats are going to nominate Joe Biden. I just find that very difficult to understand. That would leave, and I think that would leave Andrew Cuomo as probably the strongest possibility there to take Biden's spot. So again, the Democrats keep, as far as I'm concerned, they keep kind of shooting themselves in the foot. But it's almost as though they want to get Biden in there so that the people around him who have been kind of pushing him and handling him will be able to run the government, and we really don't know who all those people are going to be. It's kind of up to the American public in that respect. And again, I think a couple other general points we should be making here in terms of presidents since, say, World War II. You'd look at people like Eisenhower and Reagan and W. Bush and Carter and Clinton. The one thing they all seem to have in common is that they're really outside the Beltway people. They're running against Beltway candidates, or certainly they've been governors and such, far removed in many cases from the Beltway, and the people seem to like that. And the problem with Biden is he is part and parcel the Beltway. He is part and parcel part of that government that has grown and grown and grown, and told the poor and the down and out that they're going to help them, and frankly done very little for them. I think that's going to work against him. And I think Trump has managed, even though he's been in the presidency for 3 years or so, has managed to convince people that he really isn't part of the Beltway. So you've got that. But also in the current election, don't sell short the power of incumbency. Trump is the incumbent, and he's in a position to do all kinds of things that may well come to his credit. For example, I noticed yesterday, I think on the web, they were saying that he might rush the vaccine as fast as he can to help him in his election. Well, naturally, I would do that too. I mean,
sure,
you get the vaccine in place. What's wrong with that? But he's got all kinds of positions he can take in foreign affairs. He's already dealt with immigration again and again and again. And you have a lot of religious issues, education issues that he's consistently pushed, and I think will continue to push. Additionally, when he visits a state, he gets a lot of attention. And so again, the power of incumbency is nothing to be poo-pooed. And if he knows what he's doing, and I think he does in that sense, he's going to be getting a lot of publicity, some good, some bad. And that's part of being an incumbent. And unless Biden finally comes out of the basement, I don't see where he's going to be able to do much there. He's got to do more than that.
Dr. Bob, you talk about the power of incumbency, the power of being in office, and right before that you talked about the dislike of people in the Beltway a long time. It seems that what you say, it almost seems paradoxical, because Trump is now in the Beltway, but he's never been part of the Beltway. Does that help Trump?
That is my point. I think
right.
That was the point I was trying to make, Brian.
Right.
Yes. He's really not one of the Beltway boys. And what's interesting about that is, of course, that even a number of the conservative think tanks and conservative spokespeople and such are turning against Trump. The reason being, they're hooked in just like the rest of the parasites into the Beltway economy and social circles and such, and Trump has nothing to do with those groups. and in fact threatens them to a certain extent with his cutbacks and regulations and funding. So no, to consider Trump a exemplar of the Beltway type, I think would be a huge mischaracterization.
Sure. Dr. Heineman, a lot of Democrats 4 years ago were saying about Trump what a lot of people on the right now are saying about Biden. 4 years ago, a lot of Democrats were saying about Trump that they could not believe that Trump was the candidate. Now the Republicans and a lot of conservatives are saying that about Biden. They cannot believe that Biden is the candidate. So it's kind of an interesting thing. You have the liberals watching the liberal media and getting one arsenal of facts to use in their arguments, conservatives following the conservative media and the arguments that go along with the conservative media, and in some ways it seems like they come to the same conclusions, the liberals and the conservatives. They can't believe what's going on.
Well, I think I can understand their views of both the liberals and conservatives. This has got to be one of the most bizarre situations that I've ever seen, and nobody at this point can tell you how this is going to turn out. I mean, if they are, I think you find somebody else to talk to, because any reasonable person would shake their head and say, this is pretty much unprecedented. I was listening to former Governor Rendell from Pennsylvania a couple of days ago, and his view was that if anybody takes Pennsylvania for granted, he said, that's a huge mistake. He said it's going to be a real tough battle in Pennsylvania for the Biden people to win. And I noticed yesterday, Pence was in Pennsylvania, Biden was in Pennsylvania. And of course, what Biden is trying to do is claim that Pennsylvania is his home state, when of course it's true, he's born and raised in Scranton, but he spent all his life, political life really, in the corporate culture of Delaware, which is very solicitous of the interests of huge major corporations. So really, he's been a Delaware politician and supporter most of his political life. So I think he'll run into some static there. But obviously, both sides consider Pennsylvania pretty key, which I think it is. And so we'll see how that works out.
Another comparison. Liberals I know have said to me for years that Trump would use, the military to stay in office. If Trump loses, Trump would have to be dragged out kicking and screaming, they say. While conservatives I know, a lot of them think that if Biden wins, that means that AOC and the squad and Bernie Sanders will be the brains of the whole thing, and that we'll eventually be in kind of a police state type Marxist situation. What do you make of those two theories?
Well, I don't know. They're kind of at odds. No, I think Trump has pretty clearly made pretty important elements in the military unhappy. And although he has done a very good job of bolstering the military and our military power, on the other hand, as we all know, he's pulled U.S. troops out of a lot of areas, most recent being Germany. And again, I don't understand, frankly, why we need troops in Germany. I think the Germans are to the point where they can take care of themselves. Now, I will say this, that any time Germany has been united, they've been a serious threat to Europe and the world. And so I suppose one view of our keeping troops in Germany is we kind of keep them under control. The Germans obviously would resent that that interpretation. But historically, the fact is every time Germany has been united, it's been a real problem for the rest of us. Let's hope they've moved beyond that. But in any case, he's moving troops out of there, and obviously he's moving troops out of the Middle East. And we got this bit about somehow the Soviets or the Russians were putting bounties on U.S. troops in Afghanistan. And I noted an analysis the other day which made the point that why would the Russians do that? Basically, the Russians are happy to have us in Afghanistan. It's to their advantage. First of all, we're spending a lot of money. We got U.S. troops, NATO troops as well, in Afghanistan, and our presence in Afghanistan is keeping the Taliban halfway under control. And I'm sure that the Russians don't want a Taliban running loose in Afghanistan right on their borders, which they had that problem before. So the idea that they want to push us out of Afghanistan, I'm thinking if I'm Putin, I'd just as soon see us tied down there. But Trump is clearly moving in the opposite direction. He's pulling troops out of there pretty fast. I think we have only about 8,500 troops left there, and I don't think we have 1,000 troops in Syria. We're basically just pulling out of the Middle East.
Yeah, which brings me to a question. We only have a couple minutes left, Dr. Heineman. Iran. Iran's not in the news a lot, but a lot going on there.
Yes, I don't know if our audience is aware of this, but there have been a series of explosions in Iran in their nuclear facilities, in their research labs, and I don't know if they've hit any of their defense bases or not, but I think there's been somewhere between a half dozen and a dozen places that have been blown up. And people, of course, are suggesting that it's the Israelis who are doing that, and it may well be, but we may be somehow blowing some of the facilities up as well. But in any case, the Iranians, in that sense, are under pretty heavy attack. And the other problem, I think, for the Iranians is that apparently the COVID-19 is running loose over there pretty heavily. So they've got a lot of serious problems on their hands, and I think somebody's taking advantage of that to really weaken their nuclear capacity and their other defense facilities. But there have been at least a half dozen serious explosions, and I think it would be too coincidental to argue that they're simply accidents of some sort. Somebody's blowing up some of their important facilities.
Okay, thanks for tipping us off to that. Yeah, because that has not been in the news, Dr. Heineman. You really have to dig around in a Google search to find that kind of thing out. With that, we have to go, as always. Great to have you on, Dr. Bob.
Just trying to be a newsmaker, Brian.